Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of Washington quarter value coins, exploring their iconic design, hidden treasures, and shocking history as we reveal the top 3 most valuable and expensive Washington quarters from the United States of America. The coins featured in this video include 1992 Washington Quarter, D Mint, Denver. 1965 Washington Quarter, No Mint Mark, Philadelphia. 1998 Washington Quarter, D Mint, Denver. These quarters are struck in copper-nickel-clad composition and feature the classic eagle reverse design, one of the most recognizable symbols in American coinage. At first glance, these coins may appear dirty, worn, and heavily circulated, just ordinary pocket change used in everyday transactions. But don't be fooled. Certain rare mint varieties, errors, and high-grade condition examples have turned some of these seemingly common quarters into collector treasures worth thousands, and in rare cases, even more, dollars today. Money bag. So before you spend that old quarter sitting in your pocket or coin jar, stick around, because you might be holding a hidden fortune in your hands. Backhand index pointing right first up. Coin number 1. A small silver-colored coin moves quietly from one hand to another. It looks ordinary, almost invisible among other coins. But sometimes the quietest coins carry the longest stories. One of those coins is the 1992 D Washington Quarter, a small piece of American pocket change that traveled through shops, wallets, vending machines, and coin jars across the United States. To most people it is simply 25 cents. Nothing special. Nothing rare. Just another quarter in the endless stream of everyday money. Yet behind that small value lives a story connected to American history, craftsmanship, and the long tradition of United States coinage. The face of the coin shows George Washington, the first president of the United States. His portrait has appeared on American quarters since 1932, the year the nation celebrated the 200th anniversary of his birth. When the design first appeared, it replaced the older standing Liberty Quarter and quickly became one of the most recognizable coins in America. For decades, the Washington Quarter passed quietly through American life. Generations used it to buy newspapers, bus tickets, snacks, and countless everyday items. Children saved them in piggy banks. Shop owners counted them at the end of long business days. The coin became part of the rhythm of daily commerce. By the time 1992 arrived, the Washington Quarter had already been circulating for 60 years. That year, millions of quarters were struck at the historic Denver Mint, one of the major facilities of the United States Mint. Coins produced there carry a small D Mint mark, a tiny letter placed beside the date that quietly tells collectors where the coin was born. When the 1992 D quarters first left the mint, they were bright and reflective. Their surfaces were smooth and crisp. The details of Washington's portrait were sharp. Fresh rolls of these coins were shipped to banks across the country, ready to enter circulation. At that time, no one imagined that decades later collectors would still be studying these coins carefully. The composition of the coin tells another chapter of the story. Earlier American quarters were made from real silver. But in the mid-1960s, rising silver prices forced the government to change the metal content of circulating coins. By 1992, quarters were produced using a copper core layered with nickel alloy, creating the familiar silver appearance while keeping production efficient. To the average person, the difference was invisible. The quarter still looked the same. It still felt the same in the hand. But collectors knew that modern coins could still hold surprises, subtle differences, unusual strikes, or small minting variations that could turn an everyday coin into something much more interesting. Turn the 1992 D quarter over and the reverse design appears. A powerful American eagle spreads its wings across the coin. The bird stands proudly above a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength and readiness, while olive branches below represent peace. Above the eagle are the words United States of America, and below it the denomination quarter dollar. This eagle design was used on Washington quarters for decades before the state quarters program began in 1999. For many collectors, it represents the classic era of the Washington Quarter, a time when the design remained stable and familiar year after year. But coins rarely stay in perfect condition. Once released into circulation, the 1992 D quarters began their long journey through everyday life. They passed through countless hands. They clinked together inside pockets and purses. They slid across store counters and disappeared into vending machines. With every exchange, the coin collected tiny marks of its travels. Scratches appeared on the surface. The once bright shine softened. Edges slowly wore down from years of contact with other coins. Eventually, many of these quarters looked dull, worn, and ordinary, the kind of coin people barely notice when receiving change. Yet for coin collectors, even a worn coin can hold fascination. Collectors often search through rolls of quarters from banks or examine jars of old coins stored in homes for years. Under bright lights and magnifying lenses, they study every detail: the sharpness of Washington's hair, the feathers of the eagle, the placement of the letters, and the clarity of the mint mark. Sometimes a small difference can spark excitement, a striking variation, an unusual die characteristic, or an exceptionally well-preserved example. And that is part of the magic of coin collecting. The thrill comes from the idea that history can hide in everyday places. A coin that once paid for a cup of coffee in 1995 might now sit quietly in a drawer somewhere. Another might have been dropped beneath a car seat years ago and forgotten. Some remain in circulation today, still moving through the economy without anyone noticing. Yet every coin carries a silent journey. Imagine the path of one single 1992 D Washington quarter. It begins inside the powerful presses of the Denver Mint. The metal blank is struck with immense pressure. Washington's portrait appears. The eagle spreads its wings on the reverse. Moments later, the coin joins thousands of others in large bags shipped to banks. Soon it enters circulation. It might buy a newspaper, pay for a parking meter, or become part of a child's coin collection. Years pass. The coin moves from pocket to pocket, city to city. It witnesses countless small moments of everyday life. And through it all, it quietly carries the story of American coinage with it. Today, when someone picks up a worn 1992 D Washington quarter, they might see nothing more than spare change. But collectors see something else. They see history. They see craftsmanship. They see the possibility that even the most ordinary coin might have a story worth discovering. Because sometimes the smallest pieces of metal hold the longest journeys. And somewhere, in a jar of loose change or at the bottom of an old drawer, a simple Washington quarter might still be waiting for someone to notice it. A small silver-colored coin slips quietly through someone's fingers. It looks ordinary, almost forgotten among other coins. But sometimes the most ordinary coins carry the most important stories. One of those coins is the 1965 Washington quarter, a small piece of American currency that marked a turning point in the history of United States coinage. At first glance, it looks like any other quarter that passes through cash registers and pockets every day. Many of them today appear worn, scratched, and dull after decades of circulation. Yet behind that simple appearance lies a story connected to economic change, historical pressure, and the transformation of American money itself. The portrait on the front of the coin belongs to George Washington, the first president of the United States. His image has appeared on the quarter since 1932, when the country celebrated the 200th anniversary of his birth. The design became an instant classic. For generations, Americans carried Washington's portrait in their pockets as they moved through everyday life. For decades, these quarters were made from real silver. The bright shine of earlier coins came from their composition, 90% silver mixed with a small amount of copper for strength. These coins were beautiful, durable, and valuable even beyond their face value. But by the early 1960s, something unexpected began happening across the United States. Silver prices started rising rapidly. People realized that the metal inside their coins was becoming worth more than the value stamped on the surface. Slowly at first, and then more quickly, Americans began pulling silver coins out of circulation. They saved them in jars, drawers, and collections. Some even melted them down for the metal itself. By 1964, the situation had become serious. The country was facing a nationwide coin shortage. Vending machines stopped working properly. Businesses struggled to make change. Banks ran short of coins. The American economy needed a solution. That moment led to one of the most dramatic changes in modern coin history. In 1965, the United States Mint introduced a completely new composition for quarters and dimes. Instead of silver, the coins would now be made from a layered structure known as copper-nickel clad. Inside the coin sat a core of copper, while the outer layers were made from nickel alloy. The result still looked silver, but the precious metal had disappeared. The 1965 Washington quarter became the first year of this new era. When these coins were struck, they carried another unusual detail: they had no mint mark at all. During the coin shortage crisis, the Mint decided to temporarily remove mint marks from circulating coins in order to discourage collectors from hoarding them. As a result, quarters from 1965, 1966, and 1967 show no identifying letter indicating where they were produced. Millions upon millions of these quarters were created as the Mint worked around the clock to solve the shortage. Massive presses struck the coins rapidly, producing them faster than ever before. Fresh bags of coins left mint facilities and were shipped to banks across the country, restoring the flow of everyday commerce. At the time, most Americans barely noticed the change. The coins looked similar. They felt similar. But the metal inside had changed forever. Turn the coin over and the reverse design shows the powerful American eagle, wings spread wide across the surface. The eagle stands proudly above a bundle of arrows, symbolizing readiness and strength, while olive branches below represent peace. This classic design appeared on Washington quarters for decades and became deeply familiar to generations of Americans. When a brand new 1965 quarter left the Mint, its surfaces were bright and sharp. Washington's profile was clear. The eagle's feathers were detailed and crisp. The coin gleamed under the light. But coins rarely stay perfect for long. Once released into circulation, these quarters began their journeys through everyday life. They moved through grocery stores, gas stations, laundromats, and restaurants. They clinked together inside pockets and purses. They rolled through vending machines and parking meters. With every transaction, the coin collected small marks of its travels. Years turned into decades. The bright surfaces dulled. The edges softened. Tiny scratches appeared from constant contact with other coins. Today, many 1965 quarters appear heavily worn, the kind of coin people barely notice when receiving change. To most people, they are simply another quarter among millions. But collectors see something deeper. They see the first year of a historic transformation in American coinage. They see the moment when silver disappeared from everyday quarters and modern clad coinage began. The 1965 Washington quarter represents that turning point, a coin standing at the crossroads between two eras. Imagine the journey of just one coin. It begins inside the roaring presses of the United States Mint during the tense days of the coin shortage. Moments after being struck, it joins thousands of other coins packed into bags and shipped across the country. Soon it enters circulation, helping restore the flow of commerce during a challenging time. From there, its journey continues. It might buy a newspaper in 1970, pay for a soda in 1985, sit in a parking meter in 1999. Eventually, it ends up in a jar of spare change, resting quietly among other coins, almost forgotten. Yet inside that small piece of metal lives the memory of a national transition, the moment when American coins changed forever. The 1965 Washington quarter may appear simple and worn today, but its story is anything but ordinary. It is a reminder that even the most common coins carry pieces of history within them. Every scratch, every faded detail marks another step in a journey that has lasted nearly 60 years. And somewhere, in pockets or coin jars across the country, these small witnesses to history continue to move quietly from hand to hand, still part of the everyday life of the nation they helped serve. A small silver-colored coin slides quietly across a store counter. No one notices it. No one stops to look twice. It is just another quarter, or at least that's what most people think. But sometimes the most ordinary coins carry extraordinary stories. One of those coins is the 1998 D Washington quarter, a small piece of American currency that spent years traveling through pockets, wallets, and cash registers across the United States. To most people, it is simply 25 cents. A coin used to buy a drink, feed a parking meter, or make exact change at a small store. Yet behind that simple value lives a story tied to American history, craftsmanship, and the long journey of coins through everyday life. The portrait on the front of the coin belongs to George Washington, the first president of the United States. His image has appeared on the quarter since 1932, when the nation honored the 200th anniversary of his birth. From that moment forward, Washington's calm profile became one of the most familiar faces in American coinage. For decades, the Washington quarter quietly circulated through American life. Millions of people handled these coins daily without thinking about their history. They passed through grocery stores, train stations, gas pumps, and vending machines. Generations of Americans grew up seeing the same portrait every time they reached for a quarter. By the time 1998 arrived, the Washington quarter had already been part of American currency for more than 60 years. That year, enormous numbers of quarters were struck at the historic Denver Mint, one of the major production facilities of the United States Mint. Coins produced there carry a tiny D mint mark beside the date, a small letter that quietly tells collectors where the coin was created. When the 1998 D quarters first left the mint, they were bright and flawless. The surfaces reflected light with a smooth shine. Washington's portrait appeared crisp and sharp. The letters surrounding the design were clean and clearly defined. Fresh rolls of these coins were packed into bags and shipped to banks across the country. From there they quickly entered circulation, becoming part of everyday transactions across cities and towns. The coin itself is made from copper-nickel-clad metal, a layered structure introduced decades earlier when rising silver prices forced the United States to remove precious metal from circulating coins. Inside the quarter sits a copper core, while the outer layers contain a nickel alloy that gives the coin its familiar silver color. To most people, the change in metal was invisible. The coin still looked like a traditional quarter. It still sounded the same when it dropped onto a counter. Yet collectors knew that modern coins could still hold surprises, unusual minting details, subtle variations, or rare conditions that might make a coin far more interesting than its face value. Turning the coin over reveals the classic reverse design used for decades before the state quarters program began. A powerful American eagle spreads its wings across the surface of the coin. The bird stands proudly above a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength and readiness. Beneath the eagle lie olive branches representing peace. This iconic eagle design became deeply familiar to generations of Americans. For many people, it represents the traditional Washington quarter, the version that existed before the designs of individual states began appearing in 1999. But once coins enter circulation, they begin a long journey. The 1998 D quarters quickly spread across the country. They moved from cash registers into pockets, from wallets into vending machines, from stores into coin jars sitting quietly on kitchen shelves. Each time the coin changed hands, it collected small signs of its travels. Tiny scratches appeared on the surface. The once bright shine slowly faded. Edges softened after years of rubbing against other coins. Eventually, many of these quarters became heavily worn. Their surfaces darkened slightly and the details of Washington's portrait softened from decades of use. To the average person today, such a coin appears ordinary and unimportant, just another piece of pocket change. Yet coin collectors see something more. Collectors often examine coins carefully under bright lights and magnifying lenses. They study every detail, the clarity of the portrait, the sharpness of the eagle's feathers, the position of letters and numbers, and the tiny mint mark that identifies where the coin was struck. Even the smallest difference can spark excitement. A slightly unusual strike, a subtle die variation, or simply a coin that survived decades in unusually well-preserved condition. These details transform an ordinary object into a small piece of history. Imagine the journey of one single 1998 D Washington quarter. It begins inside the powerful minting presses of the Denver Mint, where tremendous pressure stamps the design onto a blank metal disc. Moments later, the coin joins thousands of others in large bags sent to banks across the nation. Soon it enters circulation. Perhaps it buys a soda in 2001. Pays a parking meter in 2007. Rests in a coin jar through the 2010s. Years pass quietly. The coin continues its journey through everyday life, touching countless hands and witnessing countless small moments that make up the story of a nation. And through it all, the coin carries its silent history. The 1998 D Washington quarter may appear simple, worn, and ordinary today, but like many coins, it represents something deeper. It is a reminder that even the smallest objects can travel through decades of human activity, quietly connecting people, places, and moments in time. Sometimes history hides in plain sight. Sometimes it sits quietly in a pocket, a drawer, or a jar of loose change, waiting for someone to notice the story stamped into a small circle of metal.